good evening. My name is Malik Abasta. Welcome to PM Express. It is a scandal that has caused government significant embarrassment, cost a minister her job, and cost a private company, Smarties Productions, a whopping 1.5 million Ghana cedis. But the controversy over the branding of some 116 buses at a cost of 3.6 million is not showing any signs of abeyance. The Human Rights Court, in a landmark ruling today, granted reliefs being sought by a number of citizens. The orders to the Attorney General are that any information that these individuals are seeking relating to this transaction must be furnished them. How will this case go? Tonight on PM Express, we are addressing this matter which has refused, virtually failed to go away. My name is Malik Abbas Dabo. When we come back, I'll introduce my guest and we will settle for the discussion. Stay tuned. You're welcome back, and we are talking the bus branding, the story that has simply refused to die. 3.6 million, a minister has lost her job. Now the Human Rights Court has issued orders to the Attorney General. With me in the studio to discuss this matter are two people who have played significant roles in this matter. One of them was on this show before when we discussed the filing of this case. I'm talking about the man who is known on social media as the Awareness General, Francis Kennedy Oklu. Also joining us is Nana Akwesiwa. He is a legal practitioner and he prosecuted this case. One of the lawyers that prosecuted this case. Nana, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Let me start with Francis. You were on this show, yes, and you said you were confident that this case will go your way.
Exactly.
Do you feel vindicated?
Oh, of course. In fact, it's a very joyous day for us. We are happy. The 7 of us who filed the case with the help of our lawyers, we are actually happy because we have been vindicated. It's obvious everybody was against this quantum of money which was used in the branding, except the beneficiaries, maybe Smarties and government.
And you are in a special position because this is your area, this is your business.
Exactly.
So you were in a better place to tell us that this was outrageously high.
And as I told you earlier, I mean, from the messages on the street, how people were speaking, you could see that everybody was angry, except the beneficiaries, those who benefited from the monies.
Nana, you are virtually the foot soldier because you did the work. Yourself and Kofi Bentel, you did the work. When you started this case, did you have sufficient conviction that this was a case that you could get a favorable judgment out of?
Yes, we had a great deal of conviction that this was a case which we were likely to win. The reason being that if you looked at the law and as against you studied the jurisprudence of the courts in such cases, we were inclined to believe strongly that we were going to have a favorable outcome.
And when you talk to a lawyer, you should trust that you will hear some of these jargon, jurisprudence. But what essentially were you asking the court to do for your clients?
Thank you. My clients went to court on the basis of, in fact, the spirit behind their going to court was the principles of probity and accountability as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution, the preamble, and then also Article 41F of the 1992 Constitution, which enjoins all citizens to protect public property and also to combat the waste and misuse of public property or public funds. Now, you'd realize that in the entire Constitution, that's the only place where the word combat is used. And in its use, it casts a positive duty on citizens to combat the misuse of public funds. So these were the two main things which took us to court. And then also, when we went, we were asking for information. So it was an assertion or an exercise of our fundamental rights to information. And so the information we were seeking, one was the contract itself. Secondly was all relevant documents pertaining to the contract. Thirdly, we were asking for full disclosure. And for the full disclosure, we were asking questions such as whether the award of the contract was done pursuant to the Public Procurement Act, one. Two, whether it was a sole sourcing contract or it was awarded through a competitive bidding.
And when you say you were seeking information, I would imagine you came under Article 21(1)(f) of the Constitution, which enjoins which says that all persons shall have a right to information subject to such qualifications and laws as are necessary in a democratic society.
That is so. That is exactly so. So these were the information that we were looking for, and today the court was very generous with us, gave us judgment, and made very emphatic orders that all the things that we were asking for, all the information that we were looking for,
we will go
should be
into the orders.
us.
I want to go back to Francis. These are the things that you asked for.
Yes.
Why were you asking for it? Why did you need the contract? Why? What are you looking for?
Malik, we are in the information age. Information itself is very vital. I mean, when you are informed, you know which direction to go. So we thought, in fact, there were suspicions, but to, make our suspicions clearer, all that we needed to back it was information. That's why we came together and then we approached our lawyers that if they could.
But looking at the kinds of information Nana listed, why didn't you simply ask for the contract? And did you ask for the contract and it wasn't given, which then necessitated your going to court?
No. I thought the court would have been the best place to go.
Nana, why didn't you advise your clients to go to the Transport Ministry and ask for the information? If that information was not offered, then you will go to court.
Well, you see, Malik, we've had a situation where personally I'm an activist, and
yes, you are an activist with the Citizens Ghana movement.
Before the Citizen Ghana movement, I was with Occupy Ghana, and I've had several occasions to deal with government agencies, and when you request for information, it's never forthcoming. It never comes. And so when they approached us and we decided that we should go to court, we felt that, look, let's just go. It's a positive right under the Constitution. Let's go to court and exercise that right. Let's vindicate our rights through the court system. In any case, that's the best place. If there is a law which says that I give you this right, and there is no other law which gives you or which lays down any modalities or any medium through which to exercise that right, then the best place to go to is the Human Rights Court in this case.
I want us to go into the issues, but I want us to deal with some other related matters. And Francis, you said there were suspicions.
Yes.
There were 116 buses, if my figures are right.
Exactly.
The total amount spent was 3.6 million. Okay. What in this transaction raised your suspicions? Why did you think that the amounts were outrageous?
Okay, apart from me being in the field, having knowledge about this branding, I think earlier one of the guys who was contracted to do the job spoke on your sister radio station, and then I think they even said they were paid around 100 cedis or so, and then justifying 100 cedis to the figures which came out, I mean, it really gives some suspicion.
And this suspicion was simply based on the fact that you thought this was too much, and the chief of staff got involved and then got some money back to the state. Why didn't you simply instruct your lawyers to stop this case?
In the first place, you see, the monies were, it was even over outrageous. Not outrageous, but over outrageous. So I think when the chief of, is it chief of staff?
Yes.
When he stepped in, maybe they brought you to the outrageous level. So which means there was still a question
mark. So we're not satisfied?
Yes, we're still not satisfied.
Now, did you share this view? Because the total amount was 3.6 million. Mm-hmm. Originally, the statement issued by the chief of staff was that on the basis of some work done by the Attorney General, some 1.9 million should be returned to the state. Later, this was cut down to 1.5 million. Do you share his view that this cut was not sufficient?
Well, I'm not in a position to tell right now, and this is partly one of the reasons why I believe that going to court and getting the information that we requested is important, because with the benefit of the information, we'll be able to analyze and make an informed judgment as to what actually transpired. Yes, we welcome the fact that the Chief of Staff directed that the AG investigates the entire transaction, and the AG did submit a report on that. But for us, even that report has been kept in the bosom of the Chief of Staff. It hasn't been made public. Such an important public issue.
Should we be worried about what the AG's recommendations were? Because the Chief of Staff told us that on the basis of the AG's recommendation, it was realized that some of the questions you were asking, whether there was sole sourcing, whether we did some bidding, the Chief of Staff answered those questions and said that they didn't, if they had asked other companies and allowed them to bid, the prices would have been brought down.
Well, we would want to know. We would want to find out beyond them refunding that amount of money. We would want to find out whether any persons, any individuals were culpable, had breached any financial regulations, had committed any acts of financial malfeasance. So we want to apprise ourselves with all this information, and then based on that, we'll be able to advise ourselves as to what next steps we want to take concerning this matter.
Francis, have you spoken to some of you are 7.
Yeah,
have you spoken to all of them?
No, not yet, but I think about half of them.
Are they in a celebratory mood?
Oh, of course. I mean, everybody is happy. Even those who didn't even join us in court, judging from Facebook, are all happy. I mean, this afternoon, people were congratulating us. Congratulations, you have done well. So I think everybody is happy.
Okay. Now let's take the issues one after the other. Mm-hmm. So you wanted information, you wanted the contract, all other related matters. The court ordered the Attorney General to give you that. What does that mean?
Well, what it means is that the court recognizes the citizen's right to information. That is a fundamental human right to information. And in its recognition thereof, it has taken the step to uphold it. And by upholding it, the court has made specific orders that all that we are looking for, all the information that we seek, should be furnished us. I think that the ramifications of this judgment is wide, especially not for only us citizens, but also for journalists as well, in the sense that now we have a situation where by this court's judgment, you only have to request for that information. What the judge, indeed, if you read the judge, is an erudite judgment. If you read the judge, is an erudite one.
And I have to say at this point that senior citizen vigilante Kofi Bentel is joining us on the show. And we are excited about that. I listened to him this afternoon on midday, and the explanations were on point. So you were talking about the judgment, the value of it.
Yes.
And before we came on, and I was telling you that I found the assertiveness of the judge, Justice Anthony Yeboah, very commendable, wouldn't you say?
I agree entirely. The judge was very, very bold. In fact, he has a reputation as a very bold judge. This is not the first time I'm appearing before him, and so I did not expect anything less from him. As you can see, the orders that he makes, and he makes the orders in such a way that you can't find any room to circumvent it.
Absolutely. let me welcome Kofi Bento to the show. Kofi, you're welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
We have to go for a break. When we come back, I'll take your opening comments on this. You are watching PM Express, and we are discussing the story that has simply refused to go away. The branding of some 116 buses at a cost of 3.6 million Ghana cedis. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. You're watching PM Express. This show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of GT Bank. Now, let's go to Kofi. You have been pouring through this judgment. 17 pages, I understand?
Yes.
What are the key things for you in this judgment?
Well, the key thing is that the judge has fleshed out the Constitution in a very clear way. All right? Before we went to court, we had all kinds of, permutations of what that constitutional provision could mean and how it could be interpreted. The AG, the Attorney General, had their own interpretation, and even who could even come under that, provision in the Constitution. People in Parliament, everybody had their own view of things. Okay, the judge has done a fantastic job explaining what really the Constitution means and how it must affect you and I. And in doing so, he may have changed our democracy forever for the better.
Did he overreach Parliament?
He didn't. He didn't. You see, what we must appreciate is that Parliament is a creature of the Constitution. Parliament is not above the Constitution. You remember when we were discussing the spy bill, one of the points that I made was that Parliament cannot make a law that derogates from the Constitution. So he's not overreaching Parliament. What he said was that Parliament should by now have passed the Right to Information Bill to give effect to the constitutional provision which guarantees us a right to information. Their failure to do so must not inure to the benefit of the executive by using that as an excuse not to give people a right that the Constitution itself gives them.
If I may just quote what the judge said so that we can put this in perspective. You were talking about giving the government the right. He says, no one benefits from his own wrong. The state ought not to be allowed to benefit from the failure to pass a Freedom of Information Act by using the non-existence of such an act as grounds for refusing to disclose the requested information.
Absolutely fantastic. And that is it. You see, the Constitution is the biggest law of the land. So you can't take away from it in any way, whether by passing new law or refusing to pass law. And all the arguments have been settled by this statement you've read. And there were so many other things he said, okay? So you see, he has given such flesh to the spirit and letter of the Constitution that he has removed doubt, that we have a right to information, and that right cannot be curtailed either by a law or the absence of a law.
In fact, he actually says that systematic failures or difficulties cannot justify breaches of fundamental human rights or dereliction of human rights obligations.
Exactly. I mean, how can you put it better? All right. So, look, I pray that we have more situations like this. I'm happy that this does not inure to anybody's personal financial benefit or anything. This inures to everybody who needs information, everybody who is a journalist, who is an ordinary citizen. This is how the Constitution empowers you to ask questions and to demand accountability. Indeed, he said also that the Constitution requires us as citizens, okay, in Article 41F, to protect and preserve public property and expose and combat misuse and waste of public funds and property. And the Constitution also guarantees our right to free expression. And he said that the freedom of expression and the right to information are so inextricably intertwined that one can be said to be worthless without the other. Without information, expression is meaningless, and vice versa. He was saying that to be a proper citizen of this country, you need information, which may be in the bosom of government. And if the government does not give it to you, you will not be able to do what the Constitution requires you to do as a proper citizen.
I was asking Nana whether when you started this case, whether he has sufficient belief that you would get this ruling. But let me ask you a variant of that. Did you foresee this death in the judge's ruling?
We hoped for it. But again, I give credit to the younger men. We hope for it. I always say my hope is in the younger generation. Nana is the one who said we should do this. I felt in my heart that this needed to be done. But sometimes I think maybe I'm either too angry or too wild in my thinking.
You're one of the most angry Ghanaians.
and it's because of some of this. You know, I believe this must be simple. But we would have so many arguments about it. All right? There are times when I wonder why we are where we are with all these things around us, which in my mind should be simple. So I give all credit to the young men who felt well. And it makes it, you know, easy for me to believe that I'm not crazy. All right. So throughout
there are others who share your opinion.
Yes, you know. So it's the younger men, you know, who said, no, we should do this. Let's go ahead. And I am happy to support and help them, you know, through whatever we needed to do. So really, the credit goes to them. I did my bit, and I think this is what we all must do to push this country forward.
Francis, you must feel very well protected, sitting between two lawyers. I tell you. But Nana, do you think that this is it? Do you entertain any fears that in spite of this ruling, given what we have seen quite recently, what the BNI did, in spite of a court's decision granting some persons bail, for whatever reason, the BNI decided to detain them, do you entertain any anxieties that somehow the Attorney General may, for some reason, decide to play hanky-panky with us and not give you all of the information?
Well, I want to believe that this government and the people who comprise it are adherents to the rule of law, and that in their adherence to the rule of law, they respect the decisions of courts, and they will comply and obey the decisions of the courts, which themselves are creatures of law, creatures of the Constitution. And so I do not have any reason whatsoever to suspect that they would play hanky-panky with us in the provision of the information that the court has ordered that they furnish us with. In any case, if we do realize in the course of enforcing this judgment that they are playing hanky-panky, the court is the best place to go back to ensure that the things are done properly.
Kofi, do you think you will get all the information that the court says you should be given?
You should never assume that because a law has been passed, it will be implemented or even respected. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And even if a constitution guarantees your liberty, if you don't assert it, somebody will take it away from you, even though you had it all the time. Look, this ruling is just giving effect to something we had had since 1992. And we have not enjoyed it since 1992 because nobody has stood up to the government until now. So the fact that it's there does not mean you're going to have it. Like they say, you don't get what you're entitled to, you get what you negotiate for or what you demand. Now, having been put out also, if we rest on our oars, somebody is going to come and abuse the powers that they have and infringe on our liberties. But let it be said that the law is now clear. If anybody tries to abuse this law or infringe it, we can go back and cite the person for contempt of the court. And we must appreciate that the public official involved can personally be held in contempt, and the government also. It is grounds for impeachment for the president to refuse to obey an order of the courts of Ghana. So it's a serious matter. So the law, like I always say, the heavy lifting has now been done. It is for the rest of us to assert ourselves. The judge makes it clear the procedure in this. Make a request. If there is a cost to the provision of the information, bear it. And that cost cannot be unreasonable. For instance, in our case, it says they should give us a photocopy of the contract. How much does it cost to do a photocopy? And every other information we want. When you have paid the cost, they have 14 days to give you the information or give you a written reason.
A very expansive reason.
A written reason why they cannot give it to you. And the reason must be one of a series of things that the judge has listed. And yes, he adds that they are not expansive. But clearly, it tells you that he has put the balance of power properly, where citizens now have the right, and the people who serve us now have to respond to us. It is not for you to give a long reason about why you need this and that information. Indeed, in this judgment again, he makes it clear, citing cases, that even frivolous information must be provided to the extent that it does not compromise the state, is that not against public morals or whatever it is. So if you want to know who the president met or who your minister met this afternoon, you can ask for that. And if it is not against national interest or whatever, you should be given that information.
Provided with that information.
Yes.
I want us to list the things you asked for, what was granted. And if you are offered all of that, what does it mean for your fight for transparency and accountability and all of that? So let's take, first you want the contract. He says that should be given to you. And then what else? So the contract, that should be given.
He said, copies of all the documents relating to the contract. So contract, all documents relating to the contract.
If there are bids or tender documents, all of that should be provided.
Yes, and then we asked for certain specific pieces of information also, and he has granted it to us. We asked for information on whether or not the award of the contract was done in adherence to the Public Procurement Act, Act 663. He said that should be answered. Whether or not the contract procurement was competitive or sole sourced, that should be answered. Whether or not there were other alternatives to this contract, they should answer that also. And by this judgment, he has also said that if there are other pieces of information we require, we should now request them. If there's a cost, pay them, and then in 14 days, we will receive them. So indeed, he has opened the gates for accountability. Some people call it a floodgate. It is not a floodgate.
So if tomorrow morning you get a brown envelope with all of this information, then what? Francis, what are you and your colleagues, together with your lawyers, going to do with this information?
I think it will help our cause for transparency and accountability. Because honestly, I voted for this government, and I expect that this government is transparent with its dealings. So that's all we seek. This information will help our cause to transparency.
Okay, so he's put it simply, and of course, those of us who are not lawyers are very simple. So Kennedy, is very simple. So you get this brown envelope, all the things that you asked for, that the court asked that you be given, are given to you. What next?
Yes, I believe that as lawyers, what we would do is to study and analyze that information. And information ought to be studied. Information ought to be digested. So what we'll do is to study, analyze, digest the information, and then with our legal lenses, we'll be able to determine or diagnose as to what next steps we can take concerning this crusade for transparency, this crusade for probity, this crusade for accountability. So analyzing and digesting that information would arm us as to what next steps we are going to take.
Kofi, let me ask a vexatious question. Is this motivated by politics or accentuated by malice or ill will towards, for the time being, the persons who are managing the state?
No. This is motivated by Article 41F of our Constitution.
Exactly.
That says that we have a responsibility, okay, to make sure that the resources of this state are not wasted. Okay, they are not stolen. You know, there are levels of malfeasance, and certain types of malfeasance insult even our intelligence. And I will never forget somebody asking me, is this the best you can do in your country? You know, there are times when you ask, why do we allow these things to happen? I don't have any personal problem with anybody who has been involved in this particular deal or any other deal. My problem is, why would you spend that kind of money? Spend is one thing, okay? Then two, why would you, in spending that kind of money for that kind of purpose, overspend or out of corruption steal 3 million or so cedis? When children in this country lie flat on their stomachs and write on concrete, all right? When we die of cholera, when people who have to give birth to children, let me finish on this one, because it's important, okay? There are things that shouldn't happen, and they happen. So the point is that there are other things that drive me, and it is not malice for anybody. I just want the people who offer themselves to serve in public office to understand that this is a poor country with great potential. If you want to serve it, serve it. In the process of serving it, you may benefit. But don't get into political office, steal money that's supposed to help poor people, and turn around and insult our intelligence. And the rest of us whose school fees have been paid by cocoa farmers in this country, we are remiss to sit down and allow people to loot this country and drive it to the ground. So it is not accentuated by any malice
and of
or
course,
even politics.
I know that you are not saying in this particular case there was clear case of stealing.
Well, I'm not saying so.
Absolutely. I just wanted to...
Oh, yes, let me clarify. I'm not saying so. I'm referring to the investigations that the government itself did that said that there was overpayment. I am referring to the investigation that showed that the Public Procurement Act was not followed. I'm referring to the investigations that showed that indeed certain monies were paid even before certain things were done. Due process was not respected.
When we come back, I'd want to know from Kofi and the rest of the team whether, and I was asking Francis this, is it not enough that the Chief of Staff, Mr. Julius Debra, got involved in this matter and that the Attorney General recommended that some money be paid, and indeed that money has been paid? Why is that not enough? What do they want? You're watching PM Express. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. You're watching PM Express, and we are talking bus branding, a 3.6 million Ghana cedis contract that has significantly caused government some embarrassment. Francis, I was pointing out that 1.5 million has been paid back, which means the contract was virtually 2 million.
Like I told you earlier, that the deal itself, I had suspicion it was over outrageous. Now when the, what's the name? Joe Debra came in, he brought you to the outrageous level. So we still have some problem to deal with, maybe to bring it to normalcy.
Yeah, but they are going to give you the documents. If the documents prove that the 2 million that has now been proven to be what was appropriate for this kind of contract, what questions can you raise?
Well, I remember my learned senior and partner in crime did mention, crime in quotes, by the way, did mention that for us as lawyers, we are more concerned with procedural justice, and as one of the Supreme Court justices would call it, procedural integrity. That is very important to us. And so in this country, it's a country of laws. There are several legislations on contracts, government contracts. There are also legislations on financial management. So there are financial management, exactly, and all of that, the regulations and all of that. And it spells out clearly the procedures for award of contract, payment of monies, and what have you. So we are interested in ascertaining how those things went through, how that 3.6 million Ghana cedis was paid. Did it follow due process? If it didn't follow due process, then certainly that amounts to a breach of the financial management laws of this country. And if you look at the financial management laws of this country, the Act itself, together with the regulations, it spells out clearly the sanctions for breach of those laws. There's the need for fiscal discipline. Now, imagine if this scandal had not broken out, Smarties would have walked away free with 3.6 million Ghana cedis. Just imagine that. Fiscal discipline is very important.
Kofi, is it not enough that has sufficient sanctions not been applied already? Because he is just pointing out 3.6 million, they've had to cough up 1.5.
If you steal my money from my room, and before you get out of my gate, I catch you and I ask you to pay back, you are not coughing back nothing. You are just giving me back my property. What I should do after taking my property from you is hand you over to the police so you'll be jailed. Okay? So again, we are sitting in a situation where the people who caused the problem, the people who gave those contracts, the people who overpaid the Smarties, the people who did whatever it was, who would have gotten away with it but for the alarm that was blown, are the same people, or more or less the same team, that is supposedly investigating what they did. The same team that is telling us that, oh, we overcharged by this amount. The same team first said that, okay, they should pay back this amount. And then they gave them terms. If you take my money and I want it back, you just give it back to me. Now you give them time to pay, you give them terms to pay. Even the amount was revised downwards. Clearly, we will be again remiss to just sit around and allow some of these things to go on in a poor third world country that takes loans to buy sanitary pads.
The General Secretary of the governing National Democratic Congress, Johnson Esiri Nketia, explained on Joy FM when this question was being put to him, why Smarties or some other persons are not being prosecuted for this. His explanation simply was, well, making them pay back the money is what is important. It doesn't make sense for the state to spend money to chase these people and then probably lose a lot more money than you are getting back. There must be some wisdom in this argument.
There is wisdom. Mr. Esiri Nketia's wisdom. Okay, and listen, corruption is a terrible problem. By Esiri Nketia's wisdom, we should just allow people to try their hands at stealing our money. And if we catch them, we should just ask them to pay back. We shouldn't bother. If we did that, which is what we've been doing in this country, somebody brazenly in this country did no work, believed that he is capable in a country of people like Ghana. He is capable of going through our courts to make frivolous claims, and I say so, frivolous claims, and demand up to 51 million cedis.
You're talking about Woyomi.
Yes. And this person had the effrontery and belief that the officials of this country would actually allow him to walk away with that kind of money. And even if he was caught, nothing will happen to him. And he succeeded.
Yes,
that is because of Esiri Nketia's wisdom.
But the High Court and the Court of Appeal both agree that he did nothing wrong.
No, I don't think that is what they said. They said the nature of the case was such that they can't hold him criminally culpable. Okay,
well, and because that's what the state brought against him. The state
I don't want to go into the legal complexity, but we're talking about Esiri Nketia's wisdom, which says that, well, we shouldn't go after people who steal our money. And I'm saying that wisdom is what gives people that kind of mindset and effrontery to actually test us this way and actually succeed. Okay, we should make corruption extremely expensive if we cannot eradicate it. We should make corruption such that if you are caught, you will pay such a price that even if you had 90% chance of not being caught, you will not do it. And that is why Esiri Nketia's wisdom on this matter is not correct. For people who do these things, and the laws are there, you pay 3, 4, 5 times. Okay, Government Protection of Contracts Act is there.
But Kofi, realistically, are we not asking too much, Nana? If we know the owner or the owners of Smarties, and we have seen her on the campaign platform, she's virtually part of the system. If you ask this person or expect that this person will be prosecuted, are we not asking too much?
No, we are not. We are not certainly.
And is the expectation not unreasonable? Because she's playing a key role in the president's campaign. I mean, the governments can't bring a case against her.
You see, Malik, in effect, what you are then saying is that all I have to do is to be a member of government, or I should befriend government, and then I can just use some dubious means to get money.
But that's a practical reality.
And just walk away. Or if alarm is blown, I go into terms with government and say that, okay, I'll pay this in installment. That's in effect what you are saying. But that shouldn't be the case. That should not be the case. I made reference to fiscal discipline. Fiscal discipline meaning that, look, the financial management, the financial administration laws of this country should be strictly adhered to. It should be strictly adhered to. The award of government contract, a Public Procurement Act should be adhered to. The era of sole sourcing and what have you should be abolished.
If it turns out that, well, there was no competitive tendering in this contract, that there was sole sourcing, which is allowed by the law anyway, under certain circumstances.
Exactly.
Assuming that those circumstances were circumvented or they were followed, but sole sourcing was used, then what?
It would be fantastic for me to know that the persons in public office are doing their jobs and doing it right. I'll sleep better. So you see, information is good for its own self. It is not, we are not looking to prove that somebody is a thief. No. We are looking to prove and convince ourselves without somebody telling us that the right things were done. Look, in other places, people sleep and they don't have a problem because they know the garbage will be collected tomorrow. They know that certain things are done. Why? Why? Because there are people who are checking like this, and in every situation where they've checked, they've realized that those who are on the job are actually doing their job. So this is actually in the interest of people who are doing their job and doing it well. This is also about the future. This ruling tells you, if you're a public official, that whatever you are doing, document it and document it well, because somebody will ask for it tomorrow.
And you'll be required to produce it.
You will be required to produce it. And you know, one of the problems of this country is that culture that we don't have, okay, of proper documentation. It also is a shot in the arm of people who are doing a good job. That look, after time, your good work will be revealed. In the US, for instance, they have, you know, a law even on national secrets. After 30 years, it's revealed for everybody to read through it. So you know that the day will come when what you've done will be scrutinized. Okay, so this is also about the future. Indeed, one of the parts of this ruling, which is very interesting to me, is the part about the State Secrets Act. Okay, there's a suggestion in this ruling, and the judge cited the case to the effect that even when you are bound by a secret, but there is an overriding public interest for you to divulge that information, and you do so, it shall be lawful. Okay, so look, we are simply saying that have this thing called probity and accountability, a sense of responsibility in handling public affairs. Not everybody is cut out for public office. Not everybody is cut out to be a politician. If you don't trust your ability to be honest, don't go into that area. Find some private sector work, work hard, make your money.
Which, by the way, will not happen. We have to take a break. When we come back, I'll be asking Kofi and Nana whether we're not jumping ahead of ourselves. Will the Attorney General not go to court and appeal this ruling? If that were to happen and the ruling is overturned, what happens? You're watching PM Express. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. You're watching PM Express, and we are talking bus branding. Before we went on the break, I was asking, are we not running ahead of ourselves? Nana, do you not foresee the Attorney General appealing this ruling?
Well, I have earlier on described this ruling as an erudite one. Indeed, I must confess, this morning as I sat in court for close to an hour when the judge was delivering this judgment, he just kept me in intellectual captivity throughout.
You needed to be paid.
Throughout, and it's an erudite judgment, and of course the possibility of appeal is there if the Attorney General feels unhappy with the decision.
As of right.
Exactly, she can appeal, but I would not be quick to say that she is going to appeal or she would not. But whatever be the case, we are ready to take this further if indeed she does appeal against this
Kofi, if
decision.
the Attorney General appeals, would you see it? Would it be a setback for your fight for accountability and transparency?
You know,
and would you be surprised if the Attorney General appeals?
I won't be that surprised because this requires that we start managing government differently in this country, especially with regards to record keeping. So she may want to appeal to just buy time. But in the spirit of this law, okay, there is very little any appeal can do. You must note that this is not a law that was pulled from the sky. This is a law that is giving flesh to a constitutional provision. There is nothing she can do to take away from the constitutional provision. And the judge has not actually added anything to the constitutional provision. The judge has simply said this is the road to the place where the Constitution wants you to go. So I won't be surprised if they appeal. I don't think they will. Because you see, there are times when an idea ripens. We are in a time in our nation where this is the time for us to take up these things and make sure that we, the people, really are in charge. And anybody who rises up against that kind of movement will be judged very harshly by history. Like I said, we have had this since 1992, but we've not enjoyed it.
The AG should feel blackmailed by what you are saying.
No, the AG is a respected senior. And I think in her quiet moments, she also has the things that she muses over. I don't think she's just going to get up and fight everything, all right? And an appeal might well expand this. Look, you take this to, you know, the great men upstairs, whether in the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court, they might give it even more flesh. You know, again, like I said, there are certain cases here, you know, the Director of Public Prosecutions versus Smith, where it is stated clearly, and this judge imported it into this judgment, even though we didn't request it, that even the exercise of discretions by persons like the Attorney General in instituting nolli prosequis can be challenged and information can be requested for them to show the basis why they did so. By extension, it means if the Attorney General refuses to call a certain witness in a certain case, we can ask for her.
Like happened in the Woyomi case, where some persons were not called, and later we were told that they were appealed to, they were actually begged to testify and they refused.
You can tomorrow go and ask for the basis for that, and you'll be supported by this ruling. So an appeal does not necessarily quash things. It might well expand this into all kinds of places. So, well, like he said, we are really ready. And we would like, you know, more, you know, discussion of this matter. I am under no doubt that this cannot be overturned in its entirety because the Constitution won't be overturned.
I have a sense that beyond just the victory, the substance of the victory, you greatly admire the scholarship in the ruling itself. Why is that?
Indeed, the scholarship in this ruling is deep. When the judge finished reading, and Nana was right, we were all sitting there entranced. Every sentence, and if you understand jurisprudence and you've gone through a bit of, you know, legal learning, you know the kind of industry that goes into a thing like this, all right? And we were entranced. We sat through listening to every word for about an hour. And when the judge finished, I commended him for his industry and hard work in this. Look, judges are not compelled to go the extra mile. They do so out of love for their profession. Okay? And frankly speaking, he could have given us something we would have had to take away with. We need to commend judges who take the extra time.
He could have given you a 5-page judgment.
He could have given me a 2-page judgment. But he took his time. He went through things. And look, he discussed the issue of what is in the public interest, you know, and what is in the interest
of the public interest.
You know, he discussed why, you know, even the lack of a request in this particular case, something that we had agonized about. He put us to rest and said that, yes, we could have done this, but in the broader picture of things, okay, this should have been that way. He went into the law and explained, distinguishing between this kind of application and what is a mandamus application, which requires certain things to be done as a precedent. And let me tell you something. Some of our senior lawyers told us that was going to be a problem for us. This judge discussed why this is not a mandamus, but it's a human rights application where substance must go over procedure.
Clearly distinguished.
He did a fantastic job. And indeed, I thank God that we have judges like that today in this country. If we had more of such, if we had, you know, more cases going to them, maybe they will do a great job for this country beyond what we think they are.
Nana, does this ruling make the right to information bill moot? It's a 13-year-old bill which has been in Parliament, has two governments have gone and, I mean, both parties have come and gone. One is still on now. It has never been passed.
I do not think that it makes it moot. Indeed, if you look at the right to information law and its sister law, perhaps I would call it sister law, the property right of spouses bill, these are two laws which should have been passed since the promulgation of the 1992 Constitution. But for so many years now, it hasn't happened. This judgment does not render it moot in any way, because we still need the right to information bill to be passed into law, because it takes care of certain things such as the parameters to exercise this particular right to information. As you know, the constitutional provision does not end at all persons are guaranteed the right to information. It goes ahead to say that subject to such laws and limitations as are necessary in a democracy. And so what are these limitations as are necessary in a democracy? And the judge in this judgment makes reference to some of them, such as public morality, national security, public safety, and then private confidential information, so that I can't tomorrow go and ask Kolebu or wherever that, look, give me the medical history of Malik. No. That is exactly, you're a private person. That's private confidential information. I can't do that. So, but the judge, after mentioning these, goes ahead to say that, but these are not exhaustive.
Kofi, do you think the ruling enhances the fight for the right to information law?
Yes, indeed, I think so. This afternoon, I made a comment which some people misunderstood to mean that the right to information law was therefore moot. It is not. What I was saying is that until that is passed, this is effectively our right to information law. But that is necessary because it will expand even on this one. I hope that it will not take away from this. So, indeed, we do need the right to information bill passed into law, you know, to further, you know, this. And I think that if that is done, it will help things, you know, forward.
On that note, we have to bring today's show to a close. My guests have been Mr. Kofi Bentil, a private legal practitioner. He's a chief citizen vigilante. I have my own friend Francis Kennedy Oklu, the awareness general, and then of course Nana Kwesi Ewua, also a private legal practitioner. The two lawyers worked on this for my friend and his 6 other colleagues. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. It's been great having the 3 gentlemen explaining the nitty-gritties of this important landmark ruling in this matter. God willing, tomorrow morning we will bring you another sizzling discussion on PM Express. My name is Malik Abbas. Have a good night.
PM Express was brought to you by